I don't hate the man. I mean, Saquon Barkley's got to do what's right for him. He's got to do what's right for his family, what's right for his career. And believe you me, he's been trying to get a long-term deal with the Giants, and Giants resisted for whatever reason. I don't really care why they did. Because there's two things here. Number one, I'm glad that Saquon got something that was legit. It's a legit contract. Unfortunately for the running backs, he'll end up with the highest contract of this running back free agent class, the most guaranteed money. So good for him. And I wanted him to go to the Cowboys, but this was the worst kept secret coming out of the combine, because that's when it all started to percolate that the Eagles are really going to be all in on Saquon Barkley. So this is another thing that came out of the combine. Just like Rich Eisen came out of the combine saying that the Giants were done with Daniel Jones.
That is right.
Right. So, all right, here's the first block to fall. And the thing that you then said is you talked about the Brian Burns contract. I loved it, too, because now it gives Joe Shane the opportunity to be the guy that's building the team. He got started late because of their initial success. He had to get in there. He had to assess the roster. He had to see the players. He had to bring in a new coach. They had to bring in new staff people. He had to bring in new scouts. He had to do it all. And their initial success, I think, made them take a step back. And that step back we saw last year. And so now he's trying to rectify where he feels like he needs to add guys. And remember, running backs and safeties are not nearly as important as pass rushers and pass blockers and run blockers.
That's right.
So they added 2 guards, they added a pass rusher, and if you ask me, that is the substance of the NFL these days outside of the wide receivers, tight ends, and the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And this is something we talked about yesterday before all the dominoes fell with McKinney and Saquon, is that this is where the league is going. The league is going away from paying running backs and safeties and these premier positions, wide receivers, corners, and linemen, and pass rushers in particular, are the way to go. And that's exactly what the New York Giants did. And I don't, for the Giants and for Saquon, this was the best case scenario. It was. Now, I know Giant fans immediately are going to say, oh, well, there's going to be a game late in the season next year. It's going to be week 16, and we go into Philadelphia, and Saquon Barkley runs for 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. Really? I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen. The guy doesn't play a heck of a lot. He's hurt every single year, and very rarely has he had those monster games like that. So I don't think that's going to happen. And by the way, the Giants are trying to build a roster. All right, so they kept Saquon for a year on the franchise tag. They were not going to pay him. If they brought him back on the franchise tag again, it would have caused even more problems. They weren't going to trade him in the middle of the season. One thing I really did agree with Tiki on is something we said at the time. The season's going to hell. You trade Saquon Barkley in the middle of the season. The fans are going to turn on you. The locker room's going to be like, well, what the hell are we doing? Why am I even caring about this? So the fact that they didn't trade him at the trade deadline was fine with me. So Saquon got the most money, and the Giants are building the roster the right way without paying a running back a stupid salary. It's a win-win for everybody. I don't know why people are freaking out yesterday. It was a best-case scenario for the Giants. It was the best-case scenario for Saquon Barkley. Maybe you'd rather see a team like the Houston Texans give Saquon Barkley the biggest deal, but that's not what happened. So, the Philadelphia Eagles have beaten you a million times over the last few years without Saquon Barkley. This is not going to change anything. It's just not. And paying a running back what the Eagles paid a running back is silly. It's silly these days.
Well, what will change things is Brian Burns on the opposite side of Kayvon Thibodeau. If Kayvon Thibodeau continues to grow. Remember earlier in the season, we didn't think he was really showing a lot, and then all of a sudden he started to show a lot in the second half of the season. So now you have, assuming that Kayvon Thibodeau continues to get better, you now have what every team in the NFL wants. They want 2 pass rushers. They want 2 edge rushers to put pressure on, and they have Dexter Lawrence in the middle of the defense. So that construction right there is something that the Giants, won Super Bowls with.
Yeah.
Think about that. So they finally got back to that. They added 2 offensive guards, which hopefully is going to make their offensive line tougher and more competitive. And, maybe, just maybe, this defense is going to be flying around, making plays, getting turnovers, and giving the offense good field position. And maybe, just maybe, the offense will actually start scoring some points. Now, I still think they have a huge question mark at quarterback, and they have to figure out what the hell they're doing there and whether or not Daniel Jones is coming back to be the starter. I don't know. That may be one of the reasons why Russell Wilson decided to go to Pittsburgh. Maybe they told him, hey, look, if you come here, you're initially going to be the backup to Daniel Jones. And if that was the case, let's go to Pittsburgh. Let's hear what they have to say. And maybe Pittsburgh says to him, look, we want you to push our starter, Kenny Pickett. We want you to go into a quarterback competition. And that's all Russell could ask for because, he has some stability there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I in no way, shape, or form am I going to insult the intelligence of one Saquon Barkley. I thought yesterday Tiki did a great job on radio.
Yeah.
He was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. I think a lot of it was tongue-in-cheek. I've heard Tiki over the years, even before he got on this radio station when he was working with Brandon, he was always talking positive about Saquon Barkley. He loves Saquon Barkley. But unfortunately, yesterday, this firestorm gets up. Somebody sends something to Saquon Barkley. He reacts to it, and all of a sudden it becomes this thing between Saquon and Tiki, which is idiotic. At the end of the day, Saquon got what he feels like he deserved. The Giants get out from under that contract, and they immediately turn around and spend the money on a pass rusher. That came out of the blue, by the way.
Yeah, no one was talking about that. I don't know why in the hell a team that is rebuilding is trading away a captain and a pass rusher of the caliber of Brian Burns, quite frankly. I mean, that is just as dumb as it gets. I mean, they got salary cap money. They could have paid the guy, whatever. It's just the Panthers being idiots benefited the Giants.
Right, and that's Dan Morgan is the new GM down there. And he needed draft picks. And they could have traded Brian Burns for a hell of a lot more, I believe, at the trading deadline last year.
Probably.
But it wasn't Dan Morgan was not the GM at the time.
Yeah.
He now is. So, this, so many things happen that could have, should have, would have. But, at the end of the day, you have to do what's in real time, what you believe is in the best interest of your football team. And they needed more draft capital. They needed more picks. And they just didn't want to pay a guy. And who knows? Maybe the guy didn't want to be there. That's the other thing. You don't know whether or not the player's agent saying, "Hey, man, look, man, he doesn't want to be here. You're not going to win. Send him to a place maybe where he could win." Now, I'm not so sure he could win at the Giants, but I will say this: this morning we wake up. I think the Giants are a better football team right now than they were yesterday.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. And I know that there were a lot of hurt Giant fans because of this whole Eagles thing, and you hate the Eagles, but just stop. I mean, you're trying to win. Saquon Barkley on this team did nothing for you over the last number of years. He's a great guy. He's exactly what you wanted from a professional and a guy that gets drafted that high and is a face of the franchise. He was perfect in that regard, but you didn't win enough games with him, and now he's gone, and you can't begrudge him for taking the most money. I mean, this is it's a business. This is adult stuff. This is real life. This isn't like, I can't believe you're betraying me. And you're right. I mean, I don't blame the Giants at all for not paying Saquon Barkley, but if a Giant fan is upset that Saquon Barkley went to the Eagles, then be upset with the organization. Be upset that they didn't trade him at the trade deadline. Be upset that you didn't give him the long-term deal or negotiate with him last year or negotiate with him this year. Be upset there if you wanted Saquon Barkley on the Giants. Don't be upset at Saquon Barkley, who said 10 million times, "I want to be a Giant for life." And he would have taken a long-term contract with the Giants if they had actually negotiated with him and gave him market value, what he was looking for. Yeah, and they never did.
I think the other thing, the tongue-in-cheek or whatever, the comment, you're dead to us now that you're with the hated Philadelphia Eagles, was taken way out of context. I mean, it's a funny thing to say. You're dead to me.
Yeah.
That guy, it's nothing more than that. And for those of us who know Tiki, that's... he was just being, I just think, just speaking to the Giant fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Giant fan that felt the way that you're talking about right now. And, this is professional sports, and it happens everywhere. Players leave teams all the time, and they go for greener pastures, more money, more guaranteed money. The one thing we all know about Saquon, put the ball in his hands, he can make guys miss, and he's a rocket out of the backfield. We also know that he's not a great pass blocker.
Yes, and the Eagles, who had a couple of guys retire, and Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey, and they, of course, had a miserable end of the season last year and have completely changed the coaching staff. I mean, they are the team that was desperate enough to get a weapon at running back like Saquon Barkley to pay him the money that they paid him. Now, I mean, Howie Roseman has been a genius in the NFL and constructing a roster the last couple of years, so he obviously knows what he's doing. But it was surprising to me that they ended up giving Saquon as much money as they did. But whatever, that's not the Giants' problem. And yesterday was one of those days where I really felt like Joe Shane was putting his fingerprints on the roster. And now the other part of this, yes, finally is right, in sitting here in the third year essentially. But the other part of this now is the draft, and what's really interesting about the way that this draft is shaping up and where the Giants pick in this draft is, for a fact, they're going to have a shot at one of those top 3 wide receivers, meaning Neighbors, probably not Marvin Harrison Jr., but Marvin Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and Odunze. They need weapons desperately. They also need a quarterback that they need to develop. So what the hell do you do there?
Well, there could be a trade there. You never know. I mean, they need players. I mean, could you drop back, a couple picks? Could you drop back?
Yeah, but then you need to with that 6th pick, if you stay there, you got to get one of the top wide receivers, or you have to draft a quarterback. There's no other way to do it.
If they stay there, yes.
And if you're trading out, man, then there's a chance that you don't get one of the top 3 wide receivers. So I wouldn't. As desperate as they need a quarterback, the top 3 guys are not going to be there when they draft. We know that already at the quarterback position. One of those wide receivers will be. And this team is in desperate need of a weapon at that position, in desperate need of it. We like Jalen Hyatt. We like Wan'Dale Robinson, but let's get real. You get one of those top wide receivers, those guys are worth their weight in gold these days.
Well, that's one of the premier positions. That's why you let go a running back.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to spread the money out. You got to know who you got to spend the money on, who are the most important players, and the positions that they play in the NFL. And it's morphed now where even though the Green Bay Packers signed both McKinney and Josh Jacobs, running back for the Raiders, they're all giddy about what they did. But remember, nobody's paying top dollar for those guys.
Yeah, right. No, they're not.
Yeah, I mean, even as good as they may be and as good as, Xavier McKinney thinks he is, it's amazing that he actually got the contract that he got. And I was happy for him because, I know he wanted to stay a Giant too. So Joe Shane just made 2 decisions. I'm not paying a running back, and I'm not paying a safety.
Yeah, which seems to be the trend most places. Now, I think both with the Packers and the Eagles, they're a little bit more desperate this offseason because the Packers are building, and they feel like the NFC is weaker than the AFC, like we all do. And they had a great season last year, and they're looking to cash in now and really take that next step forward. And the Philadelphia Eagles were – they're trying to, whatever window that they still have that is open for them to win a Super Bowl with this current roster, they're going for it.
What's amazing to me is that DeAndre Swift had a good year for them last year, and he left now and is with the Bears. I don't know if he was involved in whatever the locker room issues were.
Yeah, right.
And, you want a high character guy in the locker room. You want a good leader in the locker room. You want somebody who goes about his business without, a lot of fanfare. That's who Saquon Barkley is.
Yeah.
That's the other part of signing a guy like Saquon is putting him in that locker room and just going about his business and really under the radar. And I would think that, that's part of, the allure of signing somebody of his character. So I think that's possibly another situation as to why Philadelphia would want to give him that money.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And Saquon, some of the fan reaction, I know we should take it a grain of salt spot, but it did bother me, the emotional craziness of the fan reaction from the Giants fan, because, the fraud and you liar and you this and you traitor. I'm like, come on. This guy came in here. This organization was total hell during his tenure here. And all he did was hold his head up high, be a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, say he wanted to be a Giant for life, never got involved in any off-field nonsense, I mean, even during the time where, that mini holdout that he had for like a couple of days, I mean, there was all the stuff that we see in professional sports from guys that screw up and do dumb stuff off the field. And like Evan Neal, like, oh, what are you, a friend of you flipping burgers and I'm a professional athlete. All these things that go on.
Never once did Saquon Barkley ever do any of that, right?
I mean, and just because he goes and gets paid in a league that doesn't pay his position, he takes the most guaranteed money. Now all of a sudden he's a traitor and a fraud and an a-hole and a this and a that. Stop it, man. Come on.
It's ridiculous.
Come on.
Absolutely ridiculous. By the way, your boy Kirk Cousins just keeps amazing me. Amazing me. So I'm looking at some of his career numbers in terms of dollars.
Yeah, well, it's going to be over $400 million, right?
Right. Well, he's got $329 million guaranteed. That's guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
And he has an opportunity to make up to $411 million through 2027. The interesting thing about him and the thing that I appreciate about him, he's bet on himself a number of times.
Yep. So we got plenty to get to this morning. More on Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons and the free agency craziness and Garrett Cole's MRI and all that stuff. This is probably the busiest sports news day we have had since the Monday after the Super Bowl. So we're excited to get into it and talk to Jerry Recco coming up